Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. This is your ultimate guide to Ashes of the Damned, covering everything you need to know, including where everything is, where the best spots are to camp out and hoard and get to those high rounds, and also some secret bits of info as well. So let's start with just an overview of all the locations, because that's gonna really ground us for the rest of the video. There are 6 main POIs. One is Janus Towers, that's the spawn. You've got Vandorn Farm, Blackwater Lake, Ashwood in the middle of the map, and then Zarya Cosmodrome and Exit 115 below it. Running through each of these very briefly, the Janus Towers area is where you're going to build Tessie, and we'll talk about that in a second. Vandorn Farm is where you'll find the Stamina Up machine and the Death Perception machine. Blackwater Lake features the Speed Cola machine. Ashwood contains Jug, and Ashwood also has the garage where you can repair Tessie. And Ashwood is also notable because it's got really large drops off the bridge in the middle, and those can kill you if you're not careful, so you really need to keep your wits about you when you're jumping around up there. Then Zarya Cosmodrome is one of the tighter areas of the entire map. It's pretty narrow and harder to train in compared to some of the other areas, and that contains the PhD machine, and you'll also find the new perk there, which we'll talk about later, called Wisp T. And finally, Exit 115 is the 6th POI, and that's where you'll find the Deadshot machine. The nice thing about the Exit 115 location is you can wall jump off some of the floating cars to get on the roofs very easily, so as much as this is a quite tight and narrow area, you can use that verticality to your advantage to kind of widen the space between you and the zombies. So let's talk about your loadout and loading into the match and the flow of a given match now that we know where some of the stuff is. You'll spawn in Janus Towers, and you're going to get your loadouts at level 4, so in your first ever match, you're just going to be using a pistol. But once you get to 4, I really recommend as a starting weapon the Peacekeeper. It's a pretty great gun, especially if you have the Vault edition of the game. You'll get yourself a weapon blueprint with attachments, including a suppressor, which, as we know from BO6, grants some extra salvage. It's less than BO6, but it still does grant you some extra salvage from getting kills with that weapon. Also, once you unlock your loadout, I'd recommend equipping Ether Shroud and your preferred Gobblegums, of course. And as you level a bit further, you'll then unlock augments, which work very similarly to how they did in Black Ops 6. And the nice thing about this is that you might be playing your first match and you might hit level 11, and if you do, you can just save and quit your game, then enable all your augments, and then load back into that save file, and the augments will then be active. So you can keep playing match number 1, but with augments, which is nice. So you're in the map, right? You're starting out, and the first thing you need to do is build old Tessie. This is very simple. You open this door, you grab Ted's head, you attach it to Tessie. And you can then drive to either Vandorn Farm or Blackwater Lake. Whichever one you choose, it doesn't actually matter, because you're going to do the same thing in both locations. You're going to clear the fungus off the sort of generator machine that is there, and then turn on the power. And this can be a little fiddly if you are using a pistol, for example, so try and make sure that you've spun the box once maybe, or you've bought yourself a weapon off the wall. Now, you'll notice when you're driving old Tessie that there are red spores in the areas between POIs, and those are kind of like landmines that will explode on impact and damage you if you're close to them. Thankfully, though, there are yellowy green spores which you can drive over and they will heal you. So Tessie, as much as you'll be being banged up by Ravagers, will still be able to make it through between the different POIs. And a nice thing about Tessie as well is if you get out of Tessie and you just leave her there for a while, she will start healing on her own. You'll actually see a little green glow around the vehicle, and that's a sign that she is healing. So once you've done one of those first 2 power switches, either the one in Blackwater Lake or the one in Vandorn Farm, you're going to end up driving to Ashwood, which is the middle POI. And at Ashwood, you're going to park Tessie, you're then going to go upstairs and open up the bridge area, and then you're going to do another generator, and that's going to allow you to restore power to that location. Then you go back downstairs to Tessie, and the garage will open, and from that point forward in your game, you will be able to repair Tessie by driving her into the garage. She will pretty much instantly start healing unless she's just immediately taken damage moments prior. Now, when you drive Tessie in there, you're also going to upgrade her, and this is going to make her faster, and it's going to attach the Pack-a-Punch to Tessie's behind. So from this point forwards, if you need a PAP, you're just going to hit Tessie in the back, I guess, something like that. And also, you can use this area, this garage, to summon Tessie. So if your teammate is hogging the vehicle or something, and parks it on the opposite side of the map to you, and you want to use Tessie, you can use the pad in the garage to get her to you a bit more easily. Now, in Ashes, there's 3 Pack-a-Punch levels, just like you'd expect from modern zombies. There are also weapon rarities in the game, and for those, you're going to need a little bit more salvage in those early rounds compared to the salvage that you had to spend in BO6 for rarity upgrades. And you can also spend salvage on ammo types as well, and both those rarity upgrades and the ammo types are going to be available at the arsenal machines that you can find around the map. One of the ones that I always find myself using is the one in Ashwood, up the stairs, sort of opposite the bridge. Now, alongside Tessie, there are other methods of transport as well. So in Ashwood, for instance, you've got lots of zip lines that go all over the place, and these are useful for avoiding the full damage in that area. Now, granted, if you have the stamina up augment to prevent full damage, then you don't need to worry about that, but most people don't use that, and they use other augments instead. So the zip lines are a great alternative to you dying to full damage. And there are also jump pads in this map, which are going to cost money, but they're going to pretty much instantly jump you between adjacent locations. Now, something to be wary of with these is that sometimes the jump pad will look like it's facing one way, and then you'll actually hold square to jump to the right, for example, and the angle will be way different. So don't take the angle of direction of the arrow on the jump pad too literally. It just basically means, do you want to go to the left of you right now or the right of you? But the angle itself is not the direction that you will fling into. Now, if you get on a jump pad and you see that actually you don't have an option to go in a certain direction, that just means that you haven't opened that area with Tessie. So you'll need to hop in Tessie, use Tessie to break down those wooden barriers to get into that new location, and you'll then be able to jump there, assuming you've also done everything you need to do to turn on the power around the map. Now, also in all of these POIs, you'll find a few recurring things. There are crafting benches basically everywhere. So if you need to craft yourself another tomahawk, for example, because tomahawks are amazing, or some stims, or maybe a score streak, then the crafting bench is what you're going to need to look for. And you'll also find a Chompy bin around the map in the different POIs as well, and that's a new feature in Black Ops 7. The way this works is you can go up to Chompy and melee it, and if it is available that round, and it's not always going to be available, but if it's available that round, it will be wriggling before you melee it, and then when you hit it, it's going to open its mouth, and you'll see a kind of black hole. You can then throw a lethal grenade into the black hole, or you can give it your current gun, and it will give you something in return, which could be some salvage, for example, or it could even be a Raygun. So feeding Chompy regularly is a really good idea, especially if you have a surplus of lethal equipment. So Chompies are everywhere. You'll also want to keep an eye out for this little green blob on the floor. This is a spore, and it kind of works similar to previous zombies maps that we've seen, where you need to find something to water the spore with. And these objects are all over the map. They're in various places. You can find them in the actual spawn in Janus Towers. You can find them in Van Dorn Farm. Like, as you go around, you're going to start getting used to where these spawn locations are. I'll show you just a couple of them now. And once you've picked up one of those kind of watering can looking devices, when you find a spore in a given area, you can go over to it and hold square, and it will start a little alarm that will attract zombies to it, and you need to defend the spore as best you can, and if you succeed, the spore is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. The more you're able to defend it, the better the reward that you're going to get once the spore eventually pops. So I've got high rarity weapons from this, I've got salvage from this, I've got essence from this. Like, it's definitely worth doing this, especially because it doesn't cost you any money. All you've got to do is just defend it for a little bit, and you can do this multiple times in your game. It's not just one singular time. So Chompy's a really good way to get salvage, and the spores are a really good way to get both salvage and points and weapons. And so you might be wondering, okay, well, what should I be prioritizing? Or like, is there a certain currency that I'm going to be really low on? Generally, I'd say in Black Ops 7, you want to be careful with the way that you spend your points, because it is easy to get into a points hole and then have a pretty tricky time digging out of it. So don't just go splurging on 7 perks right at the start of the game. Instead, be tactical and think, okay, I'm gonna try and wait to upgrade my weapon to Pack-a-Punch Tier 1 until it's a gun that I really want to invest in, ideally. Like, maybe you spin the box a couple times and you get a high rarity weapon, and you're like, okay, I traded some points there for the rarity upgrade, essentially, going from maybe gray rarity with your loadout weapon to a blue rarity, for example. And then you can afford to say, okay, well, because I got those rarity upgrades for free, now I can spend a little bit of my salvage on getting myself an ammo type or something like that to make your life a little bit easier. Like, you're going to want to sort of trade your resources for each other in that kind of sense. But usually I'd recommend spinning the box before round 10 in your game and trying to get a higher rarity weapon that way, and then pack-a-punching from there. That's my typical approach. Now, one thing you will notice as you play is you'll get to round 5 or round 6, and you'll get a special round, and it's a new enemy type. These are Ravagers, which are basically the modern version of Denizens. These things are not only special rounds, but they will also spawn in during regular rounds, and they steal your stuff. So if there's a gun on the floor, or salvage on the floor, or anything on the floor, they will come over and start munching it. And when they've munched, you will see that they start glowing. And so what you can do is you can prevent them from eating your stuff by just taking them out early, or you can wait for them to munch, and then you can take them out afterwards, and you'll get some tasty salvage to pick up from the dead Ravager. Obviously, at the end of the special rounds, when you get Ravager rounds, that will give you a max ammo, but unlike some of the previous games of zombies, in this, if you don't kill the final Ravager and it runs away and burrows into the floor, you will not get your max ammo, so be careful about that. Now, speaking of new enemy types, the Zursa is also in Black Ops 7 Zombies, and this is going to first spawn on round 16. It's a bear. It's got 3 yellow weak points, and when you destroy those, it will reveal 3 red glowing weak points underneath. And each time you destroy one of the yellow weak points, it will also drop a kind of beehive that will swarm that area for a short time. And it will also fire bees at you and does damage over time when it swipes you and things like that as well. The bears can be pretty frustrating. So one tip that I have for you is to use the hunter drones. That's one of the tactical equipments available in Black Ops 7. And those do pretty good damage to special and elite enemies. So you just fire that into the air, and then when the bear comes nearby, it will kind of burrow into it and do a bunch of damage. The sad thing is that isn't going to be enough later in your game, because as you get further in the rounds, you're going to end up getting 2 Zursas per Zursa round. And for that, I'd really recommend by that point trying to do things like having a precision weapon that can be very good at taking out those weak points, or ideally something like a Raygun, because that tends to be very effective at taking them down. You can use tomahawks on their weak points as well, but just bear in mind that it might be hard for you to pick that tomahawk back up again as you're running away from the bear, and you don't want to lose it to a Ravager. So that's new enemy types in the map. There's also some returning enemy types as well. But let's keep focusing on new things for now. The new perk, Wisp T, is found in Zarya Cosmodrome, like I said, and it spawns a wisp that follows you around and damages zombies for a short time, and then it will disappear for about 2 minutes, and then it will come back and start attacking zombies again. It has round end protection, so it will not kill the last zombie in the round, so you don't have to worry about that, which is nice, but generally it's a little underwhelming before you've got augments for it, so I'd recommend leveling up your other stuff first, and then probably focusing on leveling the augments for Wisp T later, just because you're not going to actually be using it that much anyway. Now, another new thing in Black Ops 7 is crushing gobblegums. You can crush them for free essence here. If you're struggling for points, this is something you're going to want to do. And the higher the rarity, the more points you will get. So Whimsicals give you 100, Rares give you 500, Epics give you 1500, Legendaries give you 3000, that's the orange ones, and Ultras, that's the red ones, give you 5000 essence each. Now, I would never ever recommend crushing your Ultra Gums. Like, that would just be insane, but you can do it if you really, really need to get some extra points. Now, another new thing in Black Ops 7 Zombies, which is first featured in Ashes, is the Disciple Injection. This replaces the Mutant Injection that we saw in Black Ops 6 and lets you transform into a Disciple instead of a Mangler. And that comes with 3 main abilities. You can drain the zombies, so you can just look around and drain everything in sight, and that's going to slowly deal damage, and it's going to lifesteal. You can then also launch zombies by picking them up and then throwing them, and you can scream at zombies, which will stun them, which is pretty cool. Now, there's a bunch of other new stuff in Ashes that we're going to get to, but I want to just get through a couple of other bits and pieces that are returning here just real quick. So the Rampage Inducer is back. It works largely the same way, although not identically, where it's in the spawn area, and if you activate it, it's going to speed up the zombies and make them a lot quicker so that you can get through those boring early rounds much faster. Now, the challenge with the Rampage Inducer is that if you're playing solo, it can make it quite fiddly to do the generators on your own, because you'll be running away from the zombies and trying to shoot the generators with no speed cola, and it's just a bit awkward to get the fungus off. So just bear that in mind, that you might want to turn on the Rampage Inducer after you've done those generators, potentially, or you can just full send it if you're confident in your abilities. But what the Rampage Inducer is not going to do is it's not going to give you any extra rewards. It's not going to give you a pat on the back. it's just going to make the game go faster. So there's no reason to do this unless you're impatient like me. Now, one thing that the Rampage Inducer did in BO6 is it would spawn in super sprinters pretty damn fast. And in Black Ops 7, they've adjusted the way that super sprinters work. And so you do not get tons and tons of early game super sprinters in this game. It just doesn't happen. So the Rampage Inducer is slightly slower because of that. Now, another returning feature that's changed slightly is the Wunderfizz, and this is a machine that allows you to buy all the perks at one machine. And previously, you'd have to get to round 25, and then the machine would spawn in and you'd be able to use it. But now, you can either get to round 25, and then it will spawn in Janus Towers, or if you buy 4 perks in your game, the machine will just spawn in and be available to be used. So if you're absolutely cooking with gas, don't worry, it's not gonna make you wait to get the rest of your perks. You can absolutely buy them sooner. However, I don't think it's a very good idea to buy them sooner because you're gonna probably want to keep those points for Pack-a-Punch upgrades earlier in the game. So just keep that in mind. Be a little stingy with your money. It will do you some good. Now, SAM trials are also back, but with a twist in Ashes. This time, they are T.E.D. tasks, and they feature T.E.D.'s absolutely gargantuan head. It is massive, and when you activate them for points, they're going to give you some kind of challenge to do, like getting kills while crouched, or all sorts of different things. You just need to try and do that, and the better you do in the time duration, the better rewards you will get from the box that will open up after the fact. This is also really worth doing, in my opinion, because you can get multiple free perks from one box from this, and those free perks are less likely to be perks you've already got in this game because they've got a new mystery perk system. So instead of how it worked previously, where in BO6, you would do a SAM trial, and then there'd be a Jug can in there, but you'd already have Jug, so you'd just be annoyed. In this, if you've already got Jug, the mystery perk is going to give you something else. So you're not going to be frustrated by your rewards, and it means that they're definitely worth paying a lot of attention to while you play. And as you're going along as well, you can save and quit, just like in BO6. You can also exfil, just like in BO6, but it works slightly differently. It's going to start at round 11, and then it's going to appear every 5 rounds. It's the telephone box in BO7, rather than just being like a radio box thing in BO6. And if you activate it, it will spawn a Zursa, and it will spawn a like bubble that you need to kill the Zursa inside alongside the zombies that are there. And that will then allow you to access the portal to exfil. The difference though is that in BO6, you had to basically all just do it together. Whereas in BO7, you can have one person exfil and the other people can choose to stay in the game and it won't mean that they failed or anything. They can just keep going. So it's a pretty cool addition to have the extra options with exfil now. Now, something that is new, I guess, in BO7 or in Ashes is the saw blade trap. You can find this in numerous POIs. There's a saw blade inside the Exit 115 diner area. There's a saw blade in Vandalin Farm. There's a saw blade in Ashwood. Like, there's a ton of saw blades around, and they work basically like a monkey bomb, but only with a very local radius of attraction. So if the zombies are far away, they will not hear the music, but if they're close to the trap, they will hear the music and they'll run into the trap. The sad thing about these, though, is that they do not attract the bears. So if you're fighting a bear and you turn this on, the bear's just going to come and clap you. So keep that in mind. And also, the traps used to give you a lot of salvage and armor plates and stuff like that from the zombies that they were killing. But Treyarch has nerfed that in the full game of BO7. And so you get a lot less of that stuff from the zombies it takes down. So that means that you're paying money to take out a lot of zombies, but you're not getting a huge amount back from it. And that means that these are slightly less sustainable to do in the long term compared to other trap strats that we have seen in the past. But still, they are very powerful and they're useful for crushing through those rounds really fast because those traps do last a really long time. They are very effective. So next, let's talk about the Wonder Weapon. This thing is the Necrofluid Gauntlet, and it's pretty sick. I think this is one of the cooler Wonder Weapon designs that we have seen so far, but it's not the only Wonder Weapon in the map. So we have the Raygun Mark 1 returning and the Raygun Mark 2 as well. And both of those Rayguns are really good. So if you're struggling to get the Necrofluid Gauntlet, then they are still very viable options if you do want to use those Rayguns. Now, to get the Necrofluid Gauntlet, as of recording this video, the exact method's not been figured out. So I'm going to present what I'm pretty confident is the answer, and then I'll trim this later and we'll fix it. You can do a free build quest for it, which is going to give you the Necrofluid Gauntlet just straight into your hands, and that can be done via the guide that I've got linked in the corner of the screen and in the description down below. And you can also get the Necrofluid Gauntlet from the mystery box. But in order to get it out of the mystery box, you have to do that free build quest once first, and that will then put it into the box for you to use in future matches. And that brings us to what to do with yourself when you actually get set up. Like when you've bought your perks, where do you kind of go from there, right? So your checklist is going to be making sure that you have got max weapon rarity, you've got an ammo type on your gun, you've got your augments enabled. If you haven't already enabled those, just save quit and select all the augments that you need to enable. Make sure you're researching one. And then you're probably going to also want to make sure that you've got tier 3 armor. And that's actually a change in BO7. So armor now is something where you find an armor wall buy, right? And you buy the blue armor, but then that is going to turn into a purple wall buy for you to buy the purple armor. So that's tier 2 and then tier 3. It's different to BO6, where in BO6, you had to find a blue wall buy and then separately find a purple one. And now you just don't have to do that for the armor. It just upgrades in place, which is really nice. But yeah, you'll make sure you've got tier 3 armor. You make sure that you've done some of those side quests that I've got on my channel. And then you're probably going to make one of two decisions. You're either going to choose to just have an easy life, right? Have a nice, easy time, in which case you're going to do what I'm about to show you. Or you're going to give yourself a bit of a harder time, but it's going to go faster and it's going to be more chaotic and maybe more fun, depending on what your playstyle is. So let's start with the easier option. Option number 1 is you go to the spawn area, which is Janus Towers, and you've got probably a Pack-a-Punch Raygun, and you've got some other weapon. I like the cap pistol with fireworks on it. I really like that as a gun, just generally. But you can use whatever else you want as well. You've probably got tomahawks. You probably are using the Stamina Up Augment Hot Foot, and you might be using things like PhD Slider and Tribologist as well, just to give you some extra maneuverability. And you're then basically just going to run around in the massive open space out there, regularly using Hot Foot to keep yourself away from the zombies. And there's so much space that you can really just roam. Anytime a bear spawns in, you're going to remember the fact that you've got your stims in an emergency if you do get low, or you've got your tomahawks that you're continuously throwing out and you can use those to take those bears down, or you might have some score streaks that you can use, or you might have a hunter drone, or you're just going to spam it with the ray gun and keep your distance. As long as you're patient, you'll be okay. And this is really the widest open area in the entire map, so it makes it a lot easier for you to get to higher rounds here, especially because there are fewer super sprinters in Black Ops 7. It's a very easy 50, in my opinion. It just takes a while, and you have to be careful when 2 bears spawn in at once. Make sure you're listening out on your headphones to hearing if there are bears spawning behind you, because sometimes they'll hop the fence and be behind you and you won't realize it. And also don't be afraid to use your field upgrades in those scenarios. I like using Ether Shroud or Frenzied Guard. I think that those are both extremely effective for anti-bear strats. And the nice thing about Ether Shroud is you can have multiple charges of it as well, and both of those charges will be refilled every time you get a full power. Now, the one thing I would caution you about is not to spam your field upgrade too much in this game, because the more you use your field upgrade, the slower it will charge back in future that game. So in those first 20, 30 rounds, if you can avoid not using it at all, it will just make your life easier later in your match. So that's the easier area, right? It's pretty open, but it's slow, and maybe it's a bit boring for you. Maybe. If that's the case, you might want to challenge yourself with one of the more formal high round strats that the community has arrived on. And I've got a link to that on the screen right now for you to click through to. And next to that, I'm going to have a link to my full Easter egg guide, so you can either choose to go for a high round, or you can choose to do the full main quest Easter egg on the map. So click through, and I will see you on one of those videos. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.